Welcome to the network, everybody. How are you? I'm fine. It's me with a face this time. We're not going faceless for this one. But I tell you what, guys, this has been in the works for a couple of months. At the beginning of the year, I really wanted to get this video out on the internet because 2024 has been a huge year, probably the biggest for PUBG Mobile. We've had a lot of changes, and honestly, if you're not one to watch SEA, then you don't even know what a PMSL is. So there's been a whole lot of questions, a lot of uncertainty, and I felt like a discussion was going to be really good for us to all sit down and have a little bit of a chat. And I tell you what, I was like, but me chatting all by myself is not really going to be all that much fun. And I met these guys at PMGC and I went, these guys know what they're talking about. You might know them as John and Blank. Welcome to the show, guys. Hello.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having us. Yeah, it's good to be here. Excited to get underway with the year.
It could be the biggest year ever. Who knows? Who knows at this point? I mean, we're still waiting on some stuff. All right, we both understand.
True.
Over here, chatting to you guys. Look, where's the PMSL? All right, where is it at? No one knows right now. We've done the qualifiers, but yeah. I think we're all just waiting. But we're excited. There's lots of changes to be discussed, and thanks for having us, Neptune.
Absolutely, 100%. I had to get you guys on because I thought, like I said, you guys know what you're doing, and who better to bring on to our little show here, the PMSL podcast. I don't think this is going to be a running thing. This might be just a one-episode podcast, but it's a catchy name nonetheless.
That's good.
Yeah,
I don't like running, so.
Yeah, it's okay. I can do a bit of a jog, but no sprinting, no long things. It's bad. It's bad anyway. I think we should just start off with, kind of what we know about PMSL, because like you said, we don't know much about it, except we've already had a lot of the qualifiers. We have seen SEA has completed their spring split, but they always do, right? That's their original thing. So we can't really look too much to them to see how we're going to be doing our own PMSL and all that sort of stuff. So, it's been a lot of changes for a lot of teams. Nobody really knows the format of this thing. And the other thing, of course, is we really have to talk about these partner teams, right? Because we've got a whole bunch of new orgs on the scene.
Yeah, it's quite a lot to sort of start wrapping our head around. Of course, like Blank was saying before, like you said just then, it's kind of like shrouded in mystery at the moment a little bit as to exactly how it's all going to go down. But we are starting to see, people starting to pick up teams, things like that. I think a lot of the most notable moves going on in over in Americas probably at the moment. But in general, I'm kind of excited and sort of just waiting to see what these formats are actually going to bring to us. Because, like you say, SEA has had the majority of the limelight up until now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that with SEA as well, we know what their PMSL entails, right? And I think, let's not call it an experiment because it's gone quite well at this point. I think that they've perfected the formula over in the Tencent kitchen over at PUBG Mobile. But I think that at the end of the day, we don't really know what's in store with these PMSLs. I think they've pretty much got all the nails in the right places at this point in time, but it still feels like there's a couple of things that need tuning just a little bit.
Yeah.
But I am looking forward to it, and I think with the qualifiers being done now, we know that there is a clear path forward. I'm just curious to see if there is any big changes from the way they've been doing things in PMSL, because PMSL and SEA is kind of just it. I don't want to boil it down to something so simple, but it basically was just a larger PMPL at that point in time. It looked nicer, it was shinier, and it was presented a little bit nicer. But overall, it was just a bigger PMPL.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest change was just having those partnership teams in, right? That's that's been sort of the thing that's been leading towards what we're excited about for the rest of this year, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be a huge change, and a lot of people love it. I was certainly kind of on the fence about it, to be honest. Not so much it was the partner team concept, because I think we need a lot of that kind of stability in PUBG Mobile, certainly in EU, because you see a lot of people just switching teams around here, left, right, and center, and maybe this will give teams a bit more of a franchised feel, which would be nice. I do want to get your guys' thoughts, though, because we do have, at this point, a lot of orgs have been announced. We have loads of BR orgs, of course. Alpha 7 is coming in here. You've got Na'Vi is a new team that we'll get into in a little bit, but, you know, Nigma Galaxy, Twisted Minds, these guys are all partnered. But for EU in particular, first of all, we only get one partner team. Boo. Second of all, while gaming gladiators, of course, have been on the scene for at least a year now, something like that, I was surprised that we're not seeing globally a lot of teams actually get partner status, even though they're a smaller org, right? Tencent really went towards the Navis, the Heroics, if I'm not mistaken, and the Gladiators as well, rather than going maybe for a De Muerte or a Virtus Pro, who've been in the scene for years and really supported the EU scene. So I was slightly on the fence about their choice in teams, or in orgs rather, even though I understood why. So like, what are your thoughts on that then?
I mean, like, I think for Gladiators, I don't want to say you're doing a disservice, but a little bit, okay, right? I think we can say Demuerte has been in the scene for quite a while, but Demuerte has been through a lot of changes, right? At the end of the day, they've got a lot of different people over in that roster. I think when you take a look at a team like Gladiators, right, who I've been part of now, there is one striking difference over on that squad at the moment. It's the fact that Kitsune is not there anymore. But this has probably been one of the, if not the longest standing teams in terms of having the same players for such a long time. And I think that kind of leads people to believe they'll be rock solid, which is why I don't really mind them being a partner team. I don't think these players are going anywhere anytime soon. They're very talented. I think at this point they just needed a little bit of a sense of direction. But I think with having them being the partner team, I'm very happy about it. It's not to say that I don't like Demuerte as a team. I think they're a great team and they've produced some unreal talent. But I do think that Gladiators was the right choice.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree on that front, and I think that when you're looking at this, like from you're picking which teams are going to be the franchise, or not the franchise spots, sorry, the partner spots. It's like a two-way investment, right? So there's always going to be stuff going on behind the scenes. And I want to clarify, I don't have any inside knowledge on what has gone on just before anyone starts running their mouths in the comments. I could see you already typing, get away from that. No. But like you've got to consider that it is a two-way investment. So there are going to be things that need to be provided by the team, like assurances in terms of like financial stability, because, you know, if you partner with a team, are they going to commit to the whole year? Like, are they going to be able to do that? Because some teams might only be able to commit as a smaller org towards, you know, one season, and they can't financially make that commitment to multiple seasons. So you've got to think about where that backing's coming from on a business sense. But I think from Blank's pretty much hit the nail on the head there from the gameplay sense. But it is that sort of dual aspect, I guess, to like what you have to think about when selecting these teams.
Yeah, it has been interesting. You both make good points. It definitely brings to light that they really need to keep that team and hold that team together, right? So they've got to pick those strong rosters that aren't going to fall apart, you know, anytime soon, sort of thing. So that's where Gladiators do come in really strong. They're not going anywhere. But then when those partner teams were being rumored and being announced, I mean, back in January, you had rosters just breaking up completely. There was teams going to different rosters or different orgs, and then players going to different rosters, all trying to vie for that partnership. So
everyone's cosplaying Unicorns of Love, you know? That's just the vibe of the preseason.
I don't think that was up to the players.
Oh gosh, yeah, no, but it's true. It's kind of, you know, ping-ponging everywhere, and it was very weird to see all of that start to happen. So, it was interesting. I kind of felt sorry for the orgs that didn't get picked, though, just because, you know, you started seeing players end up leaving their orgs that have supported them for the last couple of years to go to a more established org that was coming in for partner and that sort of thing. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, but I definitely see your points there. So viewers, take that as you will and give us your opinion in the comments, because we all want to see. Just
Yeah.
Just tell us all about it. What is your thought on those things?
Tell us what you think. What do you think about this?
Get on those comments, guys. Come on.
That's what we want to know.
Yeah.
While you're at it, subscribe and like. Guys.
Oh, okay, all right, that's staying in.
But for real though, I think it's. Honestly, I really like the point you make because it's not something that a lot of people would consider because a lot of people watch these teams and they support their personal teams. But I think if you're one of us guys, not to say that we're separate in any way, but we do have to have like a little less of that bias at the end of the day. And I do have it sometimes. There's some teams that just perform so well, do something so crazy.
Yeah.
I do really want to push them to win. But at the same time, I do look at a lot of the teams now. Become quite comfortable with a lot of these teams as well. And yeah, you're right. It is sad looking at them ping-ponging all over the place and leaving to go to different rosters, leaving rosters behind that perhaps have supported them well for a very, very long time. Yeah. It leads me into the point about PUBG Mobile in general with some of these teams and rosters that they have like this one-star player, this one MVP player who could probably do really well elsewhere, but he just likes the team he's on, right? He just likes the team he's on. Unfortunately, that's no longer really an accessible thing to do with a lot of the PMPLs getting cut down right into a smaller amount of tournaments. So it has to be a smaller amount of teams as well. I think it hurts a lot of rosters, but I think it really strengthens the esport as a whole though, because you now have teams and players who are really looking to form a rock solid roster, keep it around because they have to if they want to stay in the game. But at the end of the day, you're right. It is a little bit sad to see a lot of these players go. And I mean, you got to watch it firsthand, Nacho, over in the qualifiers. Yeah. It's just just two teams.
I know. That was absolutely brutal that only 2 teams got in because, you know, the top 4, I mean, it was Nexus and Dagestan. And that last day, they were all within 10 points of each other all day, and they all deserved to go through. I just wish it had been like, you know, top 3, something like that. But no, it was top 2.
Just one more.
Just one more. It just seems so brutal for these teams, right? I will say the nice thing about this whole new format is we are seeing a lot of new teams. I mean, there were teams in there I've never heard of and who did really well, actually. So it was nice to see a more clear way for teams to move out of the amateur into the pro leagues a lot as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of that for sure.
Yeah, I think we are in a bit of tumult. I think it's safe to summarize it as we have a lot of chaos going on, but hopefully, like Blank says, it will sort of layer itself into a nice foundation into that. And I think there will be victims of that. So you know, and that's gonna suck. Victims. That's gonna suck. That's gonna suck for a lot of people, you know.
Yeah.
More casualties. That's a better way of saying it, right? There will be casualties of
Even
this
worse.
restructuring, but in the end, it will, like you say, create some strong foundation that we can sort of really start to push this PMSL as and these partnership teams. And they are still going to need that support from down below, right? You still need those foundations, those grassroots to feed teams at the top, because in the end, you know, players are going to retire, players are going to move around, players are going to move off, and new talent needs to come through, and it always needs to be supplied, and that needs to come from somewhere.
Yeah,
absolutely. It needs to be brutal.
Yes.
It needs to be brutal at the end of the day.
I mean,
because we need... Go on.
No, I was going to say it just trains you better, right? Having that kind of... It's not easy.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Because we need name value. I think we need name value in a lot of these teams. And we've had some of it for a little bit in a lot of different regions, but it's not really been growing as fast as I'd like it to, especially with having several teams coming in every single year. You do have some regulars at PMGC, but it's not as many as I would have expected over the years. Yeah. So I think getting that name value back, having strong teams, making advised decisions on pickups and roster changes, where it might be a case of in 2 years' time, you know, we get to the next PMGC, you've seen very similar faces, and that's because they are meant to be there. But you'll also have that historical value of, you know, where they've come from. They're on the same team,
right.
And they're working together in harmony. I think we just had a lot of hodgepodge going on a little bit. I can use that phrase. I think that's an acceptable phrase.
Yeah, you got that.
Absolutely.
You snuck that
But
in. That's good.
I think it's good. I think it is good for the scene. I've harped on about this for ages now. I'm sorry.
I think it's reasonable to like talk about it as well, because I think the name value that you're looking for as well exists in some capacity, but in some teams that don't necessarily always make it. I mean, most notably in the last season, the Gladiators, right? That roster that we talked about being so stalwart, they have that name value. Kitsune's got that name value as an IGL. The rest of the team as well, Matic, Meku, Tixi, just, they have got that presence to an extent, especially if you're an EU fan. But then they weren't there. And so if they had been there, there would have been more of that excitement, that more historical storytelling that I think, like you said, Blank doesn't really come through.
Yeah. I hope you don't mind me saying this, Neptune, because I'm skipping ahead a little bit in the script.
No, go ahead.
A little hidden script on the side.
Oh, yeah.
This is the thing, is that this is the first time we've seen something like this happen within PUBG Mobile with a roster like Gladiators, with Kitsune leaving, right, and going to Team Spirit. That I don't think that change comes lightly, because and the fact that it's coming at the same time as PMSL coming around as well feels very apparent to me, because he could have stayed on that team on the partner side and not had to qualify right over in the qualifiers itself, but he took that route and he saw it as a way to progress his career and get further in. I think Kitsune is a great player. Equally, I think a lot of the other players over on Gladiators are equally good. I think there was a mash of personalities on that side, though, unfortunately, because it's got to the point where Matic used to be. I'm going a little bit in deep here, but don't worry, guys.
Tea. Let's have it.
It's the tea.
The nitty gritty in the hodgepodge. Let's go.
That's right. Getting the nitty gritty in the hodgepodge with the Gladiators.
Nice.
But yeah, I think Matic is a really good example of this, of a player growing as not only a person but as a player too, because I think that he used to have a very aggressive mentality, but since working with a coach in the past, I think Matic's really grown into himself. He's more of a shot caller now. And it doesn't really work alongside with Kitsune, and you could tell during the games there was definitely some I don't want to say definitely, but there seemed to be some disagreements in what the team wanted to do going forward. And I think PMSL coming around, Kitsune realizes he can no longer be on a team like that anymore, and Matic can't be on the same team as him either. And it might have been mutual, who knows? But the fact that they split is arguably much better for both of them, rather than staying together and kind of just festering over in that position. I think this is a much better decision, and similar decisions have been made all over the world right now in PUBG Mobile, and that again is what I want to make clear is what's so important about this new league.
Well, I think I'm actually very encouraged by this discussion, because I was like, oh my god, there's just so much happening and everybody's ping-ponging and everything. But you know what? You're right. This is definitely leading towards a much more solid esports scene in general, which I can appreciate. It's been something I've really wanted for years now, because I've worked with teams that are going in and out and don't know what they're doing, or the org is happy but the roster is not, and it's just all this, it's a mess. And so you see it on every level, and it's really crazy that you have one team and then they have one bad tournament, PMPL doesn't work, or something, any team or any any tournament doesn't work, and they go, okay, this isn't working, we need a new player. And it's like, no, you don't. You really don't.
No,
and
that's not the solution.
It's not.
I think
Just go again.
Historically, that's like what I've said a lot before, is that I really value sticking together over the course of it. And obviously with all these changes coming in globally, it kind of flies in the face of that. But I think looking back on like how I was thinking about it, I think in my mind it was more, no, you don't need to throw away a good thing. But now we're getting to the point where players aren't throwing away a good thing, they're throwing away things that weren't working for them in that capacity, and it's more player driven, I think, on a lot of these moves, which is I think probably going to play out well, because I think for a long time I've said I really value teams sticking together, and I think I predict almost every time, whenever we have to do predictions, a team that has kept the same roster for multiple seasons or from the last season. But yeah, so it's exciting. It's exciting to see that more player-driven transfer focus.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see what's going on. I mean, we did, talking about teams and stuff like that, we did see the EU qualifiers, of course. We've just talked a little bit about Team Spirit. And Team Spirit, okay, I get these two, ever since PMGC, I get these two mixed up, so you're going to have to help me on this one. Team Spirit, the rest of their roster is from Mad Bulls, yes? Not Major Pride, or is it the other way around?
Give me one
second. No, he has to look it up as well.
I've got it. I'm pulling up the team. I'm trying to find the Team Spirit page that I've got open.
No, it's
we're all on Wikipedia right now.
Yeah.
It's the Major Pride squad.
Okay, it's Major Pride.
I looked at this earlier, actually.
I can't.
I was just making you sweat there.
Yeah, thank you.
But I think that, honestly, the surprising thing about that is that they brought in Kitsune, but they didn't. Dino doesn't seem to be in the team anymore, which I thought was a bit of a weird one, personally. Just because I think it's Dino. I'm pretty sure it's Dino.
Yeah.
I think someone got angry at me for calling him Dino before, but I like the idea that he's a big Jurassic animal.
Yeah.
All right, come on. Allow me to have that. When you spell
it Dino, it's going to be Dino,
well, I mean,
yeah.
According to Liquipedia, this is on the Major Pride, Dino retired, right?
He retired.
So he's not actually gone anywhere.
That's so sad.
But I do wonder though, like to sort of layer on top of that, if that was player driven or not, right? Is it a here?
Will we see him
please,
again popping up elsewhere?
Exactly, right? Because you never know.
Yeah.
The rosters haven't been announced for locked in for the various regional places, and of course you could just get exported, right? Go to another region entirely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I do worry for that team though, just a little bit, just because Dino's not there. I think Dino was probably the one that had like the most amount of growth out of a lot of them. I think Nomi really did grow into his own as well, but he felt more like a star player much earlier, whereas Dino had a lot more work to do. But if you are out there, Dino, massive respect to you, man, because over the years that we watched you, like at the start, it was not good. But you quickly became one of my favorite players on that team. So, respect, man. I think that you held them together very, very well. So I just wonder how they're going to go forward. But I think Kitsune does bring a good bit of leadership to the squad that's much required.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to watch Kitsune and figure out which is a GG strategy and which is a Kitsune strategy, right? Because we're seeing a lot of the same stuff that the GG roster did, but in Team Spirit, because it's Kitsune, the IGL, that's doing all that. So that's been really interesting for me to watch. I've been liking where they've been going with that. But, let's stretch our legs outside of the region a little bit. What about we move over not too far? How about Fireflux? We love Fireflux in this house. They're probably my favorite Turkish team, to be honest, just because I liked how they played. They play very similarly to the Gladiators, to be honest. But I did like them a lot. And Blank, you picked them as one of your teams to watch for this year. What are your thoughts on them then?
I think that that they've gone through some changes, right? I do really like Fireflux as a team, and I think that they've kept pushing and pushing and pushing. They've had their moments of greatness, and it's just kind of didn't all pan out the way they expected it to. I do really respect what they did last year, though, because it didn't feel like they were faltering. I think there were some other Turkish squads that did feel like they were almost cruise control through the year. However, that was a very, very minimum amount of those teams that were doing it. I think for now RC Bra, but Bra back then was a team that really fought tooth and nail to get where they did towards the future of their tournaments within PUBG Mobile. But Fireflux, we were talking about them, have an incredible roster on them. And I think that this is the first time where I feel like, they've actually been able to isolate some of the best players in the region and put them into something that I think could work out really, really well. So definitely a team to continue watching because every time you watch Fireflux, I don't know who it is within the team that's able to do this, but whenever they bring new players in or they're just in a situation where they feel like they can't handle it, they're very quick to the uptake in terms of, turning down all that noise and becoming quite calm in the moment and trying to deal with that way. I think it's only a matter of time before we start to see them get some big money points on the board.
That'd be nice.
And I don't think It would be nice. I don't think Ketch is going to slow down anytime soon either. I think that he had his glory days around about a year and a half. That slowed down a little bit, but towards the end of last year, I definitely felt him coming back. Felt like passion was alive in him. Just a little bit too late.
Yeah, they had a terrible showing for their chance to qualify. Although they did nearly get in on a technicality, I think, to PMGC through the Turkey points, right? Yeah, there was some funny PMGC points technicalities that nearly caused them to qualify, but the case didn't arise because S2G didn't do well.
It was a good thing. It was a good thing they didn't qualify off the back of that, because they shouldn't have qualified off a technicality in the first place. I think the same could be said for the Gladiators. I think it was a good kick up the arse for them to get things done right. So I think for Flux, it wouldn't have changed anything, because getting through on a technicality, I think their mindset had to change in a big way. Right. I think getting partnered coming into this year is definitely something that will give them a lot of drive to do better, and there are a squad of players who all can do better. So impress me.
Good points all around. I think, though, speaking of PMGC, we have to talk a little bit about IHC, right? Because we saw them just come in and wipe the floor with a lot of lobbies. It was really interesting to watch them live, because I was there all 3 days, and seeing them perform and actually be kind of inconsistent the first few days, and then just come out of the park with the last couple of games, beat Stalwart or ex-Stalwart with 4 points and all of this, and it was crazy stuff to watch. But they definitely have been here a lot over the last few years, because of course they were the original Zeus, I think, and then they've progressed over the last 4 years. So they've definitely one of those OG squads. The roster's been together since 2019, which again speaks to just stop changing players around. But
there's a few changes, but not too many.
I think Icy left
the guys that,
a couple years into it or something like that, and he went to Stalwart.
He joined up with Stalwart. I think the thing that IHC just like completely blew everyone out the water with at PMGC was this higher focus on elimination points, right? They basically traded on their ability to just get loads and loads of eliminations in a lot of different spots. And that's not really something that we've seen. Most of the time, when you look towards the top, you get some elimination outweights, but in general, it's fairly balanced. But we saw IHC just completely like change the rules on that, which is a really, really interesting dynamic to look at how they're going to be bringing that into the new season with the roster that was able to perform like that against the best teams in the world, right? I don't think going into this tournament to PMGC, anyone would have had IHC as the winner on their cards. I think it was just very, very unlikely that you would have done. If you did, congratulations, I guess. Well that's a very good lie that you can keep telling yourself. And we'll but to see that power move forwards and that elimination focus into the new season, I think is going to be really, really interesting, and to be able to keep that roster together that was able to do that.
I don't think it's going to happen though, sadly. I think the driving factor behind IHC winning was just a lack of pressure at all on them, honestly, because you look at what's happened in the last few years. It was Nova winning twice back to back. They felt insurmountable. China felt insurmountable as a region. They were really, really difficult to beat. Suddenly, year 3 rolls around, and there has been just a massive shake-up in terms of performance over all the regions. Americas used to be laughed at quite a bit. Not the case anymore. Some of these Brazilian squads are absolutely disgustingly good at the game. Europe's really risen a far way, and Turkey also, taking the reins. Obviously with S2G taking the title. But I think that was the big change though coming into 2023, was the fact that because S2G had taken that title, it now meant that if S2G could do it, anyone could.
Right.
So you come into 2023, you've got Alpha 7, you've got Stalwart, you've got quite a few teams with big names over in PMGC, and honestly, I think they let the pressure get to them on those final days, or that final day at least, because they were so focused on taking the victory, as opposed to playing how they both did on day one, which was just fast and loose, and how they usually play, bumping up those points. But the closer they got to that first place, the further they got away from that first place, in my opinion. And IHC just played the way they love playing the game. They played PUBG Mobile because they were passionate about PUBG Mobile. And I think if Alpha 7 and Stall were able to do that without this massive pressure of being the best in the world on their heads, maybe one of those teams would have taken it instead. I think IHE is a great team, and I'd like to see what they can do this year. But I do think that if teams like Alpha 7 can get it out of their heads this year, they're likely to take the title because they have everything they need to do it. But you saw them playing a little bit worried, a little bit scared, and that is not the Brazilian PUBG Mobile way.
You're right. Yeah, definitely. It's been interesting. I would agree, as good as they are, they're not on the top of my head for the win this year. To be honest, just because, I think it is what you said. There was a lot of factors going into that. A lot of it is the lack of pressure on them, and then the pressure on other teams as well. And as well as they played, are they going to be able to be that consistent across the year? We'll have to see. But it is going to be an interesting one. I see going to be one of those teams, if I'm not mistaken, that will be new to the PMSL format. So that's going to be something else for them to kind of work around and work towards, because they're not an SEA team. So this is going to be completely new to them. So there is more, I suppose, of that sentiment of, if they can do it, anybody can do it, because now you have the world champions having a new situation just like the rest of us. So it really evens that playing field a lot.
They've redrawn the borders, right? So a little bit about who's playing where. So in the CSA region, it's going to be really interesting because these are teams that we don't see clash on a regular basis. I think it's Mad Bulls and Major Pride right now from that Central Asia part of the region, and then coming in against some Mongolian teams, which, as you say, have historically played against SEA teams, and I think we got like DRS from Nepal as well. So it's an interesting mix. It's an interesting change up, and I think it's going to develop those play styles. And I wanted to bring up IHC because of the way that they played in those grand finals, because of the direction towards a more elimination heavy focus. And to be honest, when you go further down the ladder, right, when you're moving beneath PMGC towards previously PMPL to PMSL now, the quality of teams is just inherently going to be slightly degraded. Not to say that they're bad by any stretch of the imagination, but I would say that you are going to get a lot of opportunity to have an impact with a playstyle like IHC's. And I agree that it's probably not a team that I'm looking at to take the title again, but I think it's a team that can definitely maintain at least a lot of presence and a lot of pressure in these lobbies against teams that aren't as higher quality as the PMGC lobby overall.
I was going to add a little caveat there that I don't think that the entirety of their win came off the back of just no pressure whatsoever. Because it certainly was a little bit. But they took a lot of skill to do what they did. And I think they sort of actually just came into their own during that tournament. It definitely...
Something clicked.
Something changed. Something changed on day two. Something changed. And I was really happy to see them do it. But I think, again, this PMSL format is going to change a lot this year. And I think we're finally getting to a point where PMGC is going to be slightly more predictable, I'd like to say. I still think that Mongolia as a whole, though, is going to be a fearsome region to go up against, and a region that I think a lot of people weren't expecting. I mean, they almost had the hat trick towards the top side of the table. 3 Mongolian teams in first, second, and third place, which would have been insane.
Yeah, and you're right, because I mean, apart from Stalwart, there were no Mongolian teams. It was all either China, or it was 4MV, or it was if you think about PMWI, it's Vampires, that sort of thing. No one really talked about Mongolia until kind of last fall, when things started. That's at least when I started actually looking at Mongolian teams, because I was coaching 7th Element at that point, and they were all in the SA region. So for me, that's when I first started paying them a bit more attention. But then coming into PMGC, they just wiped the lobby, and all three of them did. So very interesting to watch them just suddenly click. Something just happened, changed, whatever, and they did a super good job. So yeah, it has been really interesting to watch them. But, you know, I think it's going to be an interesting one. I mean, to be fair, they have a long way to go this year, right? I mean, we'll get into PMGC UK a little bit later on, but yeah, it's you know, you have to also factor in kind of that time difference and that jet lag factor a little bit as well. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I suppose it's not that different to Turkey, but it's a 4-hour flight from me, so there's going to be a few extra hours in there, or Turkey was rather. So so yeah, I think it'll be an interesting one. Similar situation, of course, is going to be, of course, the new Skyforce. There was a whole lot of stuff going on with Skyforce Stalwart going on in January, February time. Yeah, that was I was getting the popcorn out every day watching what was going on there, man. Sheesh. Yeah. But
I don't know what to say about that one, honestly. It was,
just kind of
delicate subject.
Yeah. No, yeah, totally. You just kind of touch on the subject and kind of just think about, you know, they did only...
You observe it.
Yeah.
It's certainly happening.
It's definitely going on right now. It's interesting.
What a strange one to bring up. Yeah. Not strange for you to bring it up. It was just... It was just a strange time
very odd.
in watching things go down in PUBG Mobile. It's like, I mean, Stalwart really have proven themselves now that they can make it all the way to the top, and it's just next year. Womp womp. That's apparently not
Never
happening
mind.
anymore.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, very strange. But they did only lose out by 4 points, right? And for me personally, if we are talking kind of PMGC, who we're thinking about, I mean, already they have a long year ahead of them, but to me, they're the next winners. If they are the team we think they are the next winners to me.
Ooh, I don't know, because I'm looking at Brazil. I mean, I thought last year
true.
PMGC last time, I thought Alpha 7 had it in the bag. I think a lot of people might have done as well, but they fell short at the final hurdle. Yeah. But they're the only other team apart from teams from Mongolia who was able to really put up a fight for that top spot. And I think that they did show a lot of talent. Obviously, we talked a little bit about them before. They've made a small adjustment to their roster, dropping, I think, Senatexa to bring in 2 extra players. So they are playing on a 5-player roster now.
Nice.
And I do think that if you had to ask me right now, I think Alpha 7 is my front runner for next season, for next year, in the UK.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brazil's coming to the UK. You know, I think it's going to
nice.
Yeah. I think that maybe Team Liquid also one to think about, just because they have some ridiculous players on that team, but I think last year was more of a proving ground for them, right? Hyperbolic time chamber for that team. So I think that they'll come out on the other end this year looking much better, much cleaner, because, you know, just observing mechanically what they're able to do, it was silly. It was really quite silly. Like, I don't know what happened in the meantime, but Isle has leveled up in ways that I couldn't imagine. And, you know, Chief and Mythic both become very, very difficult parts of the defense on that squad to kind of crumble. So yeah, I think John's definitely right. Is that Brazil is certainly a region to be looking at going forward. It's so hard to say at this point in time on Neptune, because a lot of regions it's no longer right. There's one powerhouse region. It's just all the regions are very good.
Yeah, especially, you know, even just thinking about where China used to be, and now we did have a few Chinese teams in the last PMGC, and they did play fairly well, but at the same time, it's not Nova. It's not what we saw from them 2 years ago. So you are very much right. It's definitely very even across the board. I think we only have 1 or 2 regions now that are struggling a little bit, but that's not in terms of talent. That's just in terms of, you know, external factors, things that are happening. Development. It would be nice if we could see these new partner teams come in and try and really get that scene going, that region going. That would be really really, really cool. I mean, I do want to speak about rosters just very quickly. Since we're on Brazil, though, because, you talked about Team Liquid, we talked about A7, both these teams. Team Liquid, brand new scene, org on the scene, rather. So that's going to be an interesting one to watch for sure. But you've also got Inco has switched up their roster. You've got Vitale, Nenebete, Gary, Nunez, and Seven. So we've heard some of these names quite a bit in the last couple of years, and that's all on one team now. And then you also have Furia, which has Adrian, Archerzin, Becker, Chowalski, and Gustayez. I'm not saying that right, but you know what? I'm sorry. It's fine.
Kajovski.
Yeah.
Kajovski.
That took us a couple months to get.
We had that beaten into us, right, by the translators. They were like, no, it's not right.
It's not Kajowski. It's not Mike. It's not Mike Wazowski.
I definitely called him Mike Kowalski at the start.
Mike Kowalski.
I was like Kowalski, I think maybe Kajovski. Yeah.
Hey,
it's those vowels in different orders. We're not used to it.
It is
tough,
yeah.
all right.
It is tough.
Struggle.
It is.
Struggle.
We had one in EU. I'm sure y'all saw it. Balsamic, or his name was Balsamic, and I could have sworn for the first 5 times I heard it, Imperium was saying balsamic.
Oh, almost certainly. That sounds.
Yeah. That's a UK thing, really. Balsamic vinegar.
I was like,
I think I did catch the legendary moment of I think Imperium said that he fell down onto a plate like balsamic vinegar or something like that. That was a classic for me.
Yeah,
it was
good. It was good.
Yeah. But yeah, overall interesting name to have. A lot of things you can do with that.
Oh, definitely.
But I'd be curious.
But it's not balsamic though, which is unfortunate.
It's not balsamic. Yeah. I was gonna be like, you're my new favorite player.
Dressing them down like a salad.
Oh no.
Pretty much.
I mean.
Oh, this poor guy. He brought this on himself.
He was betrayed by his teammate. Like a Caesar.
Like a Caesar.
Yeah, salad.
Excellent.
I'm going on with the salad theme here.
Excellent.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
He brought this on himself. If he doesn't like it, he needs to change his name. It's not our fault.
That's right. He needs to.
I'm only ever calling him balsamic from now on.
100%. That's his only name.
So sorry. It's a big sidetrack here.
What's he gonna do? Wilt at me? Don't think so.
Oh my goodness. Oh my god. Okay. I mean, let's just think back to what we were talking about. Interesting kind of development that we've also seen, and I think we'll touch on this and then kind of move on a little bit. Was we do see a couple of teams, particularly in Turkey. I don't think we saw this anywhere else necessarily, maybe 1 or 2 in Brazil, but we did see a couple of Turkish orgs actually merge to get a partnership. If I'm not mistaken, it was to get a partnership, which they ended up doing. So you have Nexruria and the Wildcats, they merged, and then you also have Regnum Karya and Bra Esports, and they merged as well, with those rosters and everything kind of mixing together. So that's going to be an interesting thing to see. I mean, this isn't unheard of, right? We have seen partnerships between many teams over the years, but it's just an interesting thing that's one of the changes that was really brought forward by this new format and by the partnership format as well, is that you do have these teams not so much being so independent, but really working together to get to a common goal, right?
Yeah, I think that kind of plays into what I touched on earlier a little bit, and this is, again, hypothesis, but I imagine that two organizations, there you go, have the two organizations have the resources to be able to commit to a longer term, which you need if you're going for a partnership, right? I think it's almost certainly the right decision for these organizations to get together. There will be players who will then no longer have a representation, because obviously two teams becoming one team, there's only so many player slots, right? But again,
we have 13 subs.
Yeah, we're a team. We've got 13 subs and 5 coaches. We have a different
team playing every day.
Yeah.
Gosh, can you imagine? Be like, well, it's the same.
Yeah.
We've got 4 Sandhawk rosters on the cards.
Let's go. I've seen it.
Oh God, can you? Ugh. No, true. true things. Now, okay, final question before we move to another segment, right? I want to know, guys, if there was a particular player or coach that you would highlight for kind of doing well in this format as little as we know about it, who would that be? Like on a global scale, you can go, or a team if you wanted to. You can be Europe, you can go global as you like. What are your thoughts?
Ooh, okay.
Interesting question, though.
I think this is something that I am interested to see and watch this year is Vampire Esports and Sertani as the coach as well. I think that obviously they are one of the highest earning PUBG Mobile teams in PUBG Mobile history.
Yeah.
Because they've been able to win 2 PMWIs back to back, right? So it's like they've just had this massive success, but then when they try and move over towards PMGC, it's just not that. It's just not the same.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be interested to see if that can keep going, if they can maintain that middle year presence, obviously with the World Cup coming in. Are they going to have that same sort of power there? Because they are an entirely Thai team, Thailand representatives. And you'd imagine that if you're going to pick a team, it might just be the team that's been able to win in Riyadh 2 years on the trot. So I'm excited to see if they're going to be able to keep that up, or if they're just going to have the same sort of failures that they've done on various different global stages.
Well, just quickly, sorry, PMSL SEA just finished and they ended up in 11th. So
they've done that before as well, though. Like in their regional stages, it's kind of wild, just the disparity that exists, because they've got really powerful players on board. Like, I mean, Tony K coming in, a massive player and a force to be reckoned with at PMWI, but then just wasn't really anywhere to be seen. And it's kind of that story that I'm seeing time and time again exist. And so I'm hoping that they can do better outside of PMW, well, not PMWI this time around, but outside of that Riyadh-based success.
Yeah, so I think I have a working theory here, basically, on how Vampire Esports works, because sort of for them, like the PMWI, or I think it's going to be the PMWC this year, I'm not sure, but whatever happens with that, I think that for Vampire Esports, what they tend to do is like treat that like as their TI, right? That's their international. Don't really care about anything else. I mean, that's where the bulk of their money comes from. And I see Stoned, he posts on his Instagram quite frequently, you know, he's just on his little private island, you know, that he's able to afford now. And he's just chilling out there, you know, having a good time. But I'm convinced that it's probably 2 months prior to when PMWI usually happens. They all head out to his private island, and all they do is just scrim for 18 hours a day in preparation to win. And then it's back to private island life after that. Once they've earned their book. And I mean, you know what? It's a reasonable way to play. I mean, there's no fame in it. There's not too much glory, but there is the money there, and reasonable enough. That's what they want. You know, I don't think it's easy to do that 2 years on the trot, and I don't think it's easy to beat those kind of teams. The only thing I do worry about is because they pretty much have a direct invite back. I really hope that the competition for PMGY this year is much fiercer. I don't really like the fact that Vampires are able to sort of do this just boot camp mentality, and then there's sometimes a few feeder teams over in Saudi, and it just allows Vampires to just get on top easily enough. And I think a lot of other teams who are as good as Vampires would love to have that opportunity.
I think the PMWC is an interesting one as well, because I kind of touched on it, right? Like the Thailand, most likely, I would say. Well, I mean, there's actually quite a few choices, and I think this is the point that I wanted to make, is in SEA, because there's so not fractured, but because there's so many different regions, feeder regions, there's a lot of very intense competition, which is country-based. So I think inside of PMWC, you're going to be looking at teams from SEA. I think you're going to be looking at China and Brazil as well. I think those are going to be the 3 big regions and presences in the World Cup.
Nice.
And especially because we don't have as many PMPLs and as many teams anymore.
Right.
Hopefully, those feeder teams won't be there, because it will just be the best of the best.
Yeah, it's definitely, you touched on the World Cup as well. It's no longer invitation based, right? So you don't have teams apart from, I'm assuming vampires. You have everybody's qualifying
It'd be weird
now.
for them not to be there, right?
Yeah, it would be weird. But yeah, and I was kind of mourning that a little bit because it's like, no, because the Invitational is cool. You get invited to do this, right? It's exclusive.
Yeah.
Where now it's kind of just another thing to qualify. But on the other hand, you're right. You are seeing...
You're not just handing a check to vampires.
Yeah, exactly. You got to work a little harder for it.
I am assuming that it is country-based teams, by the way. I don't think that's technically a fact, but I think that's a reasonable assumption.
We're speculating.
Yeah, that's speculation.
Yeah. As is, to be honest, I mean, you guys have all the experience and everything, but until Tencent tells us how the format's actually working, it's all speculation. We're all guessing at this point because Tencent, give us information.
I have a small flashlight.
Yeah.
And the room in which PUBG Mobile is in right now, very dark. Very, very dark.
Blake's me going through the bins trying to get their details.
Like one of those wind-up flashlights as well. It's not good.
A dynamo. You love it.
Yeah.
Totally. Oh my goodness. Well, this has been a good discussion so far, but we're not done yet. We got a few more thoughts, and also people at home, if you're if you got questions and you've got thoughts and opinions, then put it in the comments. That's just your call to action for the mid part of this is leave a comment and tell us what you think about what we're talking about and your opinion about these teams, because we want to know, right? There's been so much discord everywhere on Instagram, on Twitter, on all these places, that we might as well all just be in one place and do it on a YouTube video, because why not? It's fun. But I do want to talk to you guys because, right, this is where your expertise really come in, because you guys have casted these teams and lots of teams for years now, and it's always going to be different between watching a game and casting a game. So I want to talk a little bit about team dynamics and strategy coming into PMSL, to the extent of what we already know, right? Are there players that you think will have more demand because of their play styles? Is that something that we could see come into play this year?
Do you want to?
It's a tough one to really answer without knowing fully the format, and I think you understand that as well, Neptune, which is fair enough. But it's just one of those ones that's quite difficult to answer without knowing exactly how it's going to go down. I'm assuming that we're going to remain on the same point system as we've done before. I think that the major difficulty is going to be this spring tournament, though. That's the one that's going to change the majority of things going forward for a lot of teams in every single PMSL that's going to be going on around the world. Right. I think what you're looking for on a squad, more than anything, is a team that is a great week one team. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you get a ton of points in that first week. What it means, and me and John have seen it plenty of times, and we mention it plenty of times as well, if you're a good week one team, it means you come out of week one with a lot of information, and you've also worked with a lot of that information. Some teams are so good at being a good week one team that you start to see some of those developments halfway through the week, which really can switch things up, because a lot of times you don't get a huge amount of time to work within these tournaments. In the past, we had really, really long form tournaments where one team would just be at the top of the tournament with so many points. It was just inevitable that you were never going to catch up with them. But for now, you really want to have those players that are quick to adjust and quick to adapt. And I think that one of those players arguably is Kitsune from Europe. We could say that. I think in the first half of the year in 2023 he was very good at doing that, and I think that's where some of the disruptions start to come into effect towards the second half of the year, and you could really tell that something was going on in the team because they just weren't adapting to the gameplay as well as they did before. But it's just those teams that either really good week one teams or really confident teams. So again, I do want to praise Team Liquid for their ability to pick up that team and their scouting, because I don't think that a huge amount of partner teams would have looked out and been like, you know what, we're going to pick up this team, formerly back in the day, Team Queso, they've been on the rise for a while, but I think whoever scouted them, mad props to them, because I think they see something in that team that not a lot of people are, and it just needs a bit of work, a bit of development, and that's the whole point of these partner teams. They can bring that support. It's going to depend on strong week one teams and orgs that are able to identify teams that just need a little bit of that extra push in the right direction, and they'll be unstoppable. So I'm very curious. And although it's not a change in format, it is technically a change in the way these teams are being built and the roster base. And I think that's important to consider.
I think if you're talking about the changing in building rosters, you've got to talk about Furia, right? Because that is an example of scouting and networking as well. It must have been, because you're pulling all these teams, these players from lots of different sources, and that's an incredible accomplishment, and it requires a very in-depth knowledge of the region, of the scene. Obviously, Team Liquid, you're right that I don't think many teams would have gone for loops and just sort of immediately jumped in on that. Also, Team Liquid, an organization based in the Netherlands, so I'm a little bit miffed that they went overseas to pick up the roster. But I think Furia, very much a similar story to what you're talking about with Team Liquid. This is a roster that you have to very creatively invent and put together, and we're going to see if that's going to work out. So
it works from day one, right?
Exactly.
That's the big goal.
Right.
Yeah. So and I think that's sort of something very much to look out for this season. And I won't go as far as to say that I think they're going to do phenomenally, because it is still an unproven quantity, but it's the sort of thing that only happens with these sorts of players, with this disparate of not just, we're just going to pick up this team or 3 players from this team, and 2 players from here,
purposeful.
And pull out some players that they played with in the past. It's very purposeful, it's very directed, and it's the sort of thing you don't do without the confidence that it's going to work at this sort of caliber. So I'm excited for Furia.
Yeah, love that. Okay. I love those responses. Thank you so much. That's really great insight for everybody there. I love where we went with that. I do want to kind of off the back of that slightly talk about maybe what regions will prefer this format, because of course we do have SEA has been a dominant force for a long time in terms of not all their teams. It wasn't as dominant as say China, where you kind of had, the top 5 were kind of all Chinese, that sort of thing. But the SEA teams have been very dominant up to this point when paired with us global, more global regions. But where are we at now? If we're all at PMSL, are we going to be seeing a little bit more even split in points when we do get to that global stage?
No, I don't think so. I think honestly less of a focus on the fact that all the regions aren't as good as each other anymore, but we're leaning further and further away from a lot of this remote play, right? I think that's something they wanted to do this year, is to get people on more lands, and I hope they do. It's something I'm praying for. But I think that for these teams in general, a lot of these guys are quite young, and they've played from home for a long time, and it's comfortable where they are. You're not having to worry about limelight or being in front of the cameras. I think that's something that scared a lot of teams over at PMGC, because it was a big venue and it had a lot of a large audience to it as well, which was awesome, by the way. Thank you, Turkey.
That's very cool.
That's awesome.
But I think that when you look at SEA, I think they have a slight edge because they've dealt with this limelight for a while now.
True.
A lot of players over there get very famous very quickly. They have to deal with the fame that comes with all of that, with doing well in your game. They're in studio a lot more often. So they have an edge that way. I think we were talking about this a few years back, the case of LAN jitters, right? LAN nervousness. And it is completely true, but I think SEA has sort of had a slight advantage here in the sense that they've already been employing all of this already.
Right.
They know how it's going to go down.
Right.
I think it's very interesting to think about that in the context of China as well, right? Because it's the PEL has I think we visited there previously in the past. Like it's
fun.
It's an incredible studio.
Awesome.
It's a really, really cool, and
I'm
that
jealous
similar
now.
sort of vibe of having that experience. Yeah, we spent a month in China. This was years ago now. Covering.
It's like 2 months.
Oh my God, yeah. It was.
Yeah.
That's a whole other story. But yeah, we went and visited the studio. It's an incredible setup, and it's a very, very well funded, well respected league, and obviously you've got name value in things like Paraboy, right? Like the player who's sort of almost synonymous with PUBG Mobile. Well,
And fashion.
Yeah, and fashion.
fashion.
Guys, great.
He was
looking.
styling in Turkey, I gotta say.
Absolutely, yeah,
He was, yeah.
He definitely was.
I felt bad.
But I'm interested because obviously that fall off that China's had over the last few years has been interesting to watch, and a little bit less pressure than the double win back to back from Nova and a lot of other very, very strong teams coming from that region. And what's interesting is that points change that's happened over in the PEL, right? Having a more homogenous point system to the rest of the global ecosystem is going to give them the opportunity to practice the very similar play style over in their region. So I'm excited to see if they're able to resurge into this next year, into 2024.
Lovely, good stuff.
You giggling at me, Blank? Are you
I just enjoyed the research.
Oh yeah, you got to.
Research.
It's a good word.
It's a great
like
word,
it,
yeah.
like it.
I love that. And finally, for this little bit, thinking about kind of what regions, it kind of ties in. And I know we've kind of said, it's not so much about regions anymore. But I do want to talk about kind of a region I've gotten into and thoroughly enjoyed in the last kind of 6 to 8 months, something like that. And that has to be Korea. The PM, what is it called? PMPS. Has been so fun to watch, and we see the rise of Korean teams at PMGC in the last few years. I mean, we had Duksan for a couple of years back in the day, and now we had Nongshim in this last year. But as I was thinking about it, the way that their format is set up, their PMPL, quote unquote, is very similar actually to PMSL, to PEL, all those kinds of things. So is Korea now looking very good for maybe a surge in dominance against more global teams?
Ooh, I would sort of go back to the default no. I don't think it was really the format experience that was giving them that gives other teams an advantage potentially. I think that to put it bluntly, it's a bit of a skill diff, like in terms of what we've seen from them before. Obviously, Korea having a more focused scene in general is going to improve their gameplay, and I think is going to only do good things for the region. Like you said, we've seen some Korean teams do incredibly well in terms of relative to their previous experience. Obviously, Nongshim, Red Force coming, like they topped out their group back in PMGC against Chinese teams, against some really, really strong teams. So yeah, I mean, I hope that they can do better, but I don't think it's something that you would be able to necessarily. I think you could maybe argue it, but I don't think you'd have a great amount of grounding to say that because of the format that they've been playing in, because of the way that their region is structured historically, they're going to have an advantage. I don't see that personally.
Yeah, I think that the major improvements and over time for Korea came with the fact that we started to isolate that region less, right? They started to go out and compete against other regions a lot more with the clashes that came through, which was a fantastic idea from PUBG Mobile. Definitely. I really enjoyed that. And I think for Korea, it was hugely important for them to get that experience outside from their region, because the poor guys were just playing within their own region all year and then sent to PMGC and getting just lit up by these other squads. And there's not much to be learned from that. So these clashes gave them an opportunity to play against teams which were much more on an equal footing, where you have a lot to learn from different ideas from different regions, because we know that the meta does change from the microcosms in separate regions, where some regions might be more reserved, some regions might be more aggressive. However, a lot of these teams that are at the top of their game are starting to realize that there's a time and place to take those particular methods and apply that methodology to your own gameplay, which is super important when you're trying to do that on the fly as well. So I think for Korea, they just never had that opportunity to learn from other teams. So although, like John says, I don't think that format is going to particularly help them this year, I think that PUBG Mobile is going in the right direction to make that region into a big contender, because they have shown some very talented players, and I'm sure more talented players will follow with a more, let's say, focused tournament for them to play in.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And, you know, there's no better practice than actually playing against some of those teams, right? So they've given them more opportunity to play against them, to research them as a lobby player rather than just, you know, a different region, let's see what they're doing, you know. So yeah, no, definitely. Okay, cool. But this has been great, guys, but you know what? We have one final little segment that I want to touch upon a little bit, because again, I'm going to call this the speculation zone, because we know nothing about PMGC 2024, but
can we call it the speculation station?
Yes, much better name. Yeah, I need that on editor, please. I need that on screen in nice big letters. This is the speculation
alarm
station.
bells everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Literally disclaimer.
With Blank in the conductor's hat pulling into the station. Let's go.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Yes, I love this. Great. But we're all UK. We're all British. We're all English here. So we need to talk about that it's coming to the UK, which I was both really happy about and really miffed about, because it was a long discussion with my family about me going to Turkey on my own, because I've never actually really traveled by myself. And then they were like, well, I'm sure it'll be closer to home next year. Maybe just wait a year. And I went, no, it's not going to. You know, it's going to go back over to the east.
Guess
where
going to go to
it
America
went.
or Brazil. Or,
No.
On your doorstep. That's 2 PMGCs you get to attend in a row.
That's true.
That is. It's nice. It's nice. And it's a bit more of my home ground. You know, at least I speak the language in the UK. But you know, you guys actually live in the UK, right? I live in France. I'm away from the UK region and the scene and all of that sort of stuff. So have you guys kind of seen amongst maybe some British people or players or people in the scene that you know, like some added enthusiasm towards the game because of this, or what's the deal on your side of the pond?
No.
I mean, no. No.
No.
It's really just
cool.
I don't think there is a UK org that currently really represents like UK in itself. I think the UK is more part of the European region. We've seen a couple of like UK players in the past come through. I think Alicio was there for a while. Who else am I thinking of? I think all of the.
That's all you're thinking of.
Nostra MVP, right? For a while.
Yeah. We've got
like,
one this year as well. We've got
back in the day.
Temp. We've got Temp from the Mind Weapon. They're almost all UK players, and they've qualified to PMSL. So there's another one.
Yeah, I got to speak to Temp actually. He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
He actually is a generally nice fellow.
He's great.
And I'm happy for them. I think they definitely needed to get some reps underneath their belt though, over in PMPL. Yeah, it took a while, but I'm glad for them that he's still around at least. But for the UK scene, it doesn't look great. I was both very happy that PMGC was coming to the UK, but also slightly confused.
I think everybody's been confused. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's fair for me to say. I mean,
definitely.
I think that it'll be a really cool venue, whatever they do over here.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I'm excited not to have to get on a plane for 11 hours, but
that's true.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I'm curious to see what they do with it.
I think it's more interesting to think about what UK orgs exist, right? I think that's probably something that is more interesting. The only big org that exists, I would say, at a global, actually probably two or three. I thought a third now. 2 or 3 big orgs that exist in the UK that don't currently do things in PUBG Mobile. Fnatic used to be present in the India region for a while, and obviously they left out there. So that would be interesting to see if they want to jump back in. I'm thinking about XL as well, who is an esports org that runs a couple of different games, and Guild, I think, are three big names that I'm thinking of. And then you've got also some more grassroots organizations. I think Reason Gaming is quite large, based in the UK, and Endpoint. Those are the two that come to mind.
I do wonder if we come to PMWC this year, that maybe Four Lions makes an entrance. Who knows? Maybe. But I think it'd be really hard to assemble a strong squad from the UK. You'd have to build everything from the ground up. Yes, there's some good UK players out there, but they are few and far between. So I don't know. Yeah. We'll see what happens.
Could be a UK org, but maybe not all UK players. Maybe. I don't know. If there's a. Oh no, for the PMWC. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, also, I don't want to get anybody's hopes up or anything, but if the Mind Weapon end up being our only UK team, I mean, it is possible they end up getting picked up by one of the orgs you mentioned or something like that. Purely speculatory. I'm just saying, if a UK team does well that we've seen, or a partial UK team, they could get picked up.
I believe, actually, just as a note, in World Cup scenarios, this is talking about traditional sports.
Yeah.
The UK competes separately. So as in Scotland, Wales, and England. So I think we might even be further gone, in terms of the talent pool there. So we'll have to see if it comes out that way. I'm not entirely. I'd have to get that confirmed, but I don't know. But Scotland and Wales as well, and Ireland. An interesting time.
Because I know Ireland does have somewhat of a PUBG scene, right? I've known a few people.
They've got some good players actually.
From there, yeah. So it'd be interesting if they ended up being part of a UK team or something like that. We'll have to see. I know.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
I know. I don't. Imperium, don't come at me, please. I'm just speculating. Speculating. Alarm bells, please.
I think it would be a cold day in hell before the Irish represent the UK on an international level. Just, I don't think that's gonna happen anytime soon.
Okay. Yeah, that's
very unlikely.
True. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I mean, I could also see maybe the UK being a hub. For PMGC purely on two reasons. One, that a lot of the European teams, it's a better base for them. I mean, I suppose, mainland Europe would be a lot better, but maybe even the American teams are tired of going halfway around the world to play a game and, jet lag and all of that kind of stuff that's involved. Yeah. So they may have been clamoring for something a little closer to home. But my other thing had kind of been... the UK and America, for me, at least from what I see on the internet, are the two countries that are really investing into their campus rosters, right? In actual IRL colleges, that are starting to fund esports as an actual extracurricular type sport scholarship type thing. And could we then start to see actually maybe the team that's going to be the host team for PMGC actually be a campus team?
Ooh, potentially, I think. If you look at, historically, America has led the way in funding and investment in their collegiate and university level esports, sports in general, and now into esports, and I think that's sort of mirroring there. They've got a lot of the infrastructure already that exists, and then in the UK, obviously, you've got a lot of college teams. Could we see a collegiate team represent the UK at that level? I mean, potentially. I don't see that to be out of the question if we're lacking something like the powerhouse teams that we see all from one country over in SEA, then absolutely. Do I think they'll do well? No. Definitely not.
Mm-mm.
But they'll be there.
Yeah, they will.
And they'll be good, but they just won't be as good as everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what comes out of having an almost non-existent scene in the UK, right? It's such a small area, and you don't see many UK players. Maybe because the gamers of the UK, they don't tend to go for the mobile stuff, where the mobile gaming has been much embraced in other regions, and maybe the UK just isn't there. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that goes and watch that. But if, you know, talking about the scene changing potentially with PMGC, do you see maybe a long-term effect on the UK scene in general, maybe leading up to PMGC, and maybe if not that, maybe teams are waiting for PMGC to happen, or PMGC is going to be the thing that really catapults the scene forward in the UK? Are we going to see maybe a more delayed gratification in 2025 after PMGC?
I think it's a difficult one to think about, right? Because I think a lot of the qualification process is already underway by now. And I think it's one of the things that you would tend to start noticing the closer you got to the end of the year. You're like, actually, what's going on? PUBG Mobile's doing a massive tournament here in the UK.
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
And by that time, it's too late to start qualifying.
Right.
I am hoping that more people in the UK start to realise that, you know, this is a big thing, and that they are hosting it within. That we're being able to host the PMGC as well, which is awesome. I do think that it's going to be very, very important to get the name spread out, because I think there is a ton of PUBG Mobile players in the UK, but like you say, a lot of them who go into a lot of them treat it as a casual game,
right?
They don't treat it as an esport, which is fair enough, right?
Sure.
But I hope that, like you say, I'm thinking this might have more of a knock-on effect next year in 2025. But it is kind of a big knock on the door, right? When you get PUBG Mobile rocking up in your country and doing PMGC, because they plaster advertisement absolutely everywhere. And we So I think this is probably one of the most heavy-handed ways you could tell the UK to be like, look, we want some esport players, okay? But all power to them. I want more UK players as well.
Absolutely.
Definitely. I think it can only go well on that front. I'm kind of thinking as well that it might be slightly generational in terms of the broader appeal of esports on a mobile platform in the UK as well. I think historically the UK, its esports presence has been mostly on PC gaming, right? With a lot of PC titles. But I think as people who are younger tend to use mobiles a lot more, mobile devices in whatever form they would take, I think that sector is going to grow over time. And I think that we saw that happen over in a lot of regions where PC gaming wasn't established, and gaming then became popular with mobile at the forefront. I mean, India is an excellent example of that. Obviously, having a little bit of trouble with PUBG Mobile over there, but like having India be such an interesting case study for how people do just want to play games, and if people are just using phones more overall on average, that it becomes such a predominant force. So it's really interesting to see, and I hope hope's not the right word, but I think that is also likely to happen in a lot of regions where PC gaming has been a dominant force over the last decade.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, PUBG Mobile and mobile gaming in general is still very young. I think PUBG was kind of on the forefront of that whole battle royale type PC game, but on a phone, and it's only 6 years old this year. So we've got a long way ahead of us in terms of, you know, who's the growth of the scene in general. And you're quite right. You know, if you do have a younger generation, when you think about kind of where we're at with the guidelines being, you know, under 16s can't play in the pro leagues and that sort of thing, it actually just might take a few years, because we've got probably, as you said, a younger generation, a younger crowd that might just not be of age yet. And so certainly in the UK, you might actually end up seeing in 2 or 3 years' time a big influx or bigger influx of players actually coming of age and being able to play professionally.
I think that's
100%
correct.
Excellent.
That's a good point.
Excellent.
I'm excited.
Yes, I am too. This has been such a great discussion. I think we've exhausted most of the points I had, so I love that. Thank you guys so much. Any closing thoughts about the 2024 season?
Excited to find out what it's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. I'm wearing up my little dynamo flashlight. I'm going to go search a little bit more, do some investigation work. I'll be back.
Cool. You can give us an update down in those comments. Heck yeah. Yeah, it's been such a pleasure having you guys on. Thank you guys so much for coming on and having such a great discussion. This has been a fantastic discussion. I hope everybody at home watching this with their popcorn and their cup of tea, which I will be getting shortly, has been informed and educated and had a great old time in the process. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate you guys coming on here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Absolutely, it's been a great time, and I don't get to speak too candidly to the folks at home too often either, unless I'm shouting at you through the old microphone and it's going through to your headphones, or if you're actually in the stands. But I appreciate either way coming out to watch the PUBG Mobile esports in general. I know a lot of people have been around for a long time, so thank you, Naptero, for actually allowing us to just have a nice chat. Honestly,
yeah, no, it's been a great time, and the best thing about PMGC coming to the UK is we actually get to hear you guys on the loudspeaker, so that's gonna be so much fun.
Well, we haven't been hired for it. Yeah, you don't know. It could be anyone. I don't know, man. Like, we'll have to wait and see.
We'll see. Speculation alert last time before the video.
Speculation station.
Whoa!
Yeah, whoa, there we go. All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching and listening and having a gay old time. If you like this, then like it. Hit a subscribe for more videos like this. I'm going to just do a blatant plug right now. And comment. We want to hear this discussion, right? It's not a three-way street. It is on screen, but it doesn't have to be. You can come in to the YouTube comments. You can come into the Discord server if you really want to as well. So go ahead and do that and discuss and have a chat with us. We want to know. But that is it from all of us here. Again, thank you so much for watching. We will see you next time on the network. And until then, bye.